Morning everyone, welcome back to David Goes Hobbies. Just an observation. These drones that have been flying over military bases and air bases or civilian aircraft um, airfields in Denmark. Now, let's do some research here. So you got drones flying over that have got CAA identification on them. In other words, warning lights, right? Or proximity lights. Now, these drones, would they have been picked up on military radar? Would they have been picked up on civilian radar? Okay. What ships were in the near vicinity of Denmark? What was their flags? Where were they registered? How many ships? Were they Russian? Were they Chinese? Were they North Korean? Israeli? We don't know. I'm not saying Israeli, I meant Iran. And if they're travelling round Denmark, who's to say that they could have not launched these drones? And it makes you wonder why Denmark didn't react in a more stringent way. Well, if they were deemed as a non-threat, perhaps NATO's rules are fire on something if you are basically fired upon. So a defensive pact, so you don't shoot unless you're shot at. There is a high risk of aircraft being hit by a drone, or the drones hitting an aircraft, vice versa. But the point I'm trying to make is there is laws in countries where you're not allowed to fly drones in proximity of an airfield. And in Denmark's case, it's 8 kilometres or 5 miles. And there is laws for every country normally about flying drones for civil aircraft and military aircraft safety. So you just can't take a drone and send it up in the air and do anything you like with it. So there's a lot more you can speculate about a situation and find out what you do know, what you don't know, and the ifs and the buts. But my attitude is this: you start asking the questions. Everyone can say, well, perhaps they bottled it and didn't shoot them down. But there's also an investigation where it's worth noting that where were they coming from? What direction were they flying in? How long was they there? How big were they? How high were they flying? And what was the weather conditions and stuff like that? How long had they been tracked? What was their courses? What was their direction of departure? Where did they go? And I will say I'm quite astounded that none of them were brought down. And I will go into some more details in another video about drones. But in this video, it's purely and simply that you've got to do some research. You really need to research these things instead of making assumptions of what you think. But it's not what you think, it's what you know. So all I'm saying is this: research it, find out the information. There's various sources out there you can start looking at. Flight radar, the ship equivalent of the plotting of the ship's courses and stuff like that. the flags of the ships, the owners of the ships and stuff like that, and the military bases, the military radar zones, the civil aircraft airports, radar zones and stuff like that. They're not going to give you the military ones, obviously, but you know, let's put it this way: in the Second World War, right, radar was just in infancy, so you could see, right, from the top of the mast, 15 miles, right, in 15 miles direction to the horizon. In other words, the curvature of the Earth. So if we take it on a 15-mile basis that you can see, yeah, because as the Earth curves, you got the curvature of the Earth, and the radar, if it's a directional radar, won't look below the horizon unless you've got special radars. But I'm not up on that, so I'm not going to speculate. All I can say is radar sends out a beam and then receives a what's name back, as far as I know. So it gives you a determination of altitude, speed and direction. Okay, so that being said, you should be able to see a flight pattern to these drones, and then you can start piecing it all together and doing an investigation. Yeah, I could do it. I could do some preliminary investigation into these drones and find out some information and perhaps come back to you. But it depends if it's already been done, so I don't really want to waste my time. So, yeah, what is your thoughts on this drone incursion to Denmark? Be interesting to find out. What do you think? So please leave a comment down below. Please like, share and subscribe. See you soon.